Hi, my name is Erica, and this is my teaching interaction assignment for week number 5. I want to go ahead and start off in what I learned in week number 3, effective teaching. The first part I'm going to talk about is what I learned from chapter 4 out of Family Life Education, Principles and Practices for Effective Outreach, and Teaching the Gospel, a handbook of CES teachers and leaders, pages 11 through 15. So I'd like to go ahead and start off with the first question that I pondered and I answered, and that is, what component display theory contains simple principles relating to teaching, yet the principles are powerful when understood and utilized. What is one specific principle you can take from this theory and weave into your lesson plan to improve your teaching effectiveness? For me, I believe that the one component I would take that I want to take into my lesson plan is how important it is to ask questions. I always have assumed that being a good teacher involves having a lot of content to give out to the participants so they can learn. But instead of that, what the theory suggests is that I ask questions and have participants participate in the lesson, and that's what I plan to do for my first lesson plan, is to have questions so that we're able to open the lesson up to discussion. And the second question I asked myself is, the handbook for CES teachers and leaders discuss the role of the Holy Ghost in learning, especially gospel learning. Yet when teaching family life education, educators will generally be working with non-LDS audiences. When this is the case, does the Holy Ghost play a role in the learning process? So what I answered is, the Holy Ghost plays a role in teaching others, especially when you ask for help. The Holy Ghost isn't going to be biased on who you teach, as long as you're not teaching something that's against the gospel principles. That would put you in a place that the Holy Ghost cannot dwell. The Holy Ghost will be there for you to help you through your lesson, especially if it's for family life education. I feel like that is such a powerful topic that so many families need help with and need more resources on, that the Spirit would be there to be able to guide you in what the family is needing lesson-wise. The next question I asked myself and I pondered is, share one specific thought you had from reading the handbook for CES teachers and leaders that you want to incorporate in your teaching. And after reading pages 11 through 15 for that section of the Teaching the Gospel handbook, is that while most people think that it's the teacher's fault for not learning or gaining anything from the lesson, I know in past seminary classes and other classes, I blame the teacher for not really gaining any insight in the class and not coming out more knowledgeable than I did going in. But it really is the learner's responsibility. It's their responsibility to participate within the lesson so that they're able to gain insights and find something that really helps enlighten them and believes that that will uplift their life. And that so as a teacher and for these lesson plans, it is important for me to try to get more participation out of the clients so that they're able to fully get what they're looking for out of these sessions. The next couple questions I answered is based off the readings in Family Life Education Principles and Practices for Effective Outreach, Chapter 5, and then the Teaching the Gospel, pages 17 to 29. The first question that I pondered is, as taught in Chapter 5, building relationships is a prelude to effective education. What little things can you realistically do to build rapport and establish a relationship with participants, whether teaching in the family relations program or a workshop? And for me, I think the relationship between an educator and a learner is so very important. especially in the family life education process, because it's hard to really try to get insight from a teacher if you don't fully trust them and you don't trust the sources that they have came up with, and the information that they're giving you. So to answer the question, what I think I could realistically do to establish a relationship is, be upfront of them if there's a topic that, I'm having a harder time finding. Kind of like missionary work. Like if you're asked a question that you really don't know, don't just try to make it up. Say, you know what, that's a awesome question. And I need to do research that on myself so I can give you the proper information, instead of just saying something that may not be entirely truthful or helpful to you. The next question I answered is, most likely you have taught in some setting before, whether it be your educational training as a missionary in church setting or some other capacity. What have you learned about involving others in discussions? And for me, when it comes to including others in discussions, what I've learned in my past experiences are that involving others in discussions have really enlightened what I have been able to take out of the class. When you're in the teacher role, typically, at least I feel that I won't really be learning from teaching them. I'm the one presenting the information. I'm the one who did the research, but that's not the case. There are many times when I'm the teacher, but I feel like I'm getting more out of the class because of the interaction I have with the learners and the participants, and the insights that they are able to put forth. And it's really amazing how that works out. The next question I answered for this section is, based on what you know about yourself from previous teaching experiences, what mistakes, if not careful, are you likely to make in the future relative to involving participants in a discussion? And so for that, my weakness when it comes to discussions is that I tend to not know when to cut off the discussion or let it keep on playing on, whether it's, I just let it sit for a while or I add more information to it. This is something that I hope through more practice and through this experience, through this class, that I'm able to really recognize, when the discussion is fully over or when it just needs a little motivation to keep on going forward. So the next week, so week number 4, designing effective instructions, we're reading from the Family Life Education textbook, chapter 6 and 7, and the Teaching the Gospel handbook, pages 35 through 41. So I pondered on a couple of these questions. I just want to lightly hit on my insight from these chapters. So I found it interesting in the handbook for CES teachers, that it's important to try to have a broader perspective when you're teaching. And doing so, it can help you tie in what you're currently teaching to something either you've already learned or a subject that you're going to learn soon, or a related subject that kind of ties in your lesson. And not only will this help the students learn the connection, but it also teaches them how to have a broader perspective and be able to do this on their own, which I think is really important, to teach others how to study well and know how to have lessons for themselves, if that makes any sense. Then the next part is, when it comes to it asked about personal narratives and what I believe I need to work harder on when I do choose to share my own personal stories. And what I've learned is that I need to work on staying on topic. There are many times I get sidetracked with, minuscule details that really don't pertain to the story or the point that I'm trying to make with the narrative that I'm sharing. When I make sure I stick to the point of the narrative and I don't go into the details that don't really need to be shared, it's a lot more effective and more confusing for all involved. I know it can get very confusing when I go off on one story, when it starts to get to somewhere where it has no relevance at all. And then I like to share with you just the last thought I had while reading these readings. And it's about having the Spirit with you. And I think, and I believe that if you ask for the Spirit and you're in the right, and you're in a place where the Spirit can dwell, the Spirit will always be there for you, whether you're teaching someone who's LDS and who is not, who doesn't have the same beliefs, or who do not. I always would encourage someone to pray and ask for guidance from the Spirit when they first start to plan their lesson, so they know what way to take the lesson. In this past week when I'm planning my first lesson for this class, I was going one way with the lesson and I thought it was going to go great. And then I started to have a feeling that, I need to go take a different path for this lesson for this particular family. So I had to kind of throw away everything I'd been working on and rearrange things so it was in a better format that I felt would better impact my teaching and the family being able to take more out of it than what was possible. So I want to go ahead and thank you so much for watching, and I'm sorry for any rough spots.